Hey everybody, KC here. So I was just reading an article on the website Medium, and it was on the subject of gaslighting. And gaslighting, in case you don't know, refers to a 1944 film directed by George Cukor and starring Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. And basically, it's about a man who tries to drive his wife insane by trying to manipulate her view of reality. So she begins to doubt whether or not the things that she thinks and believes are real actually are. And within the context of this article I was reading, it was all about whether or not business is going to try and gaslight the American consumer as the pandemic starts to recede. And basically, in this case, what they're talking about is the idea that business will try and convince consumers that this is really all just a dream, right? It was an anomaly. It was an outlier. It didn't really happen, or it'll never happen again. So you don't have to worry about it. And I think that it's an interesting question to ask. I'm not sure I entirely agree with the premise of the article in the sense that I don't necessarily think this is something that business is going to impose on consumers. In some ways, they may be responding consumers. I think a lot of consumers desperately want this to have been a dream. If you ask people, what would happen if you woke up tomorrow morning and found that this really didn't happen? People would be overwhelmingly relieved. That's the degree of disruption we've all had in our lives. And I'm not sure business ever wants to be in the position of trying to lecture to consumers, saying, we know you want to forget about it, but we're gonna explain this to you in mind-numbing detail and make sure you don't forget about it. So we all have a decision to make. I, for one, sort of hope that we don't forget about it as a culture, whether you're talking about consumers or business, simply because I think this has awakened us to a lot of the weaknesses in our cultural and business infrastructure. And I think it's important that we learn from those things and apply those learnings going forward. I do think that the capacity for human beings to forget what they've learned is almost unending. I think we all have the capacity to be stupid over and over and over again. Sometimes I think it's a rarity when we're not stupid all over and over and over again. I do think this is something that businesses have to consider. And I don't think it's the kind of thing you can wait to consider when we're receding out of the pandemic. I think it's important to think about it now. This may all be over in 3 to 6 months. Okay, if we get a vaccine and there's lots of testing and suddenly we could move beyond this pretty quickly, but it may not happen. We may be living with this reality for another 6, 12, 18 months, if depending on how things develop. I think it's important for business to start thinking about these things now. Have people who focus on these things now. Because the worst thing you can do, if you're gaslighting other people, you could end up gaslighting yourself. The one thing you don't want to do is put yourself in a position where you're doubting the reality around you. It's really important to deal with reality, because it's only in dealing with reality that you can move forward, as opposed to just looking back fondly. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.